Okay, so LYFT had their IPO last week. They're brand new to the NASDAQ, and this is their first full week of trading. If you're like me, you're watching every candle come out, you're watching every piece of news on LYFT, and you're trying to figure out where can I get an entry so I can get in on the action. In this video, I'm gonna give you 3 tips to help you get a better idea of how to take an entry on LYFT. Let's go. Okay, I'm super excited to shoot this video today. I've been watching LYFT since last week. I was thinking about it a lot over the weekend, and I decided to go ahead and break down the charts to kind of show you where to maybe be watching LYFT for an entry and to get an idea of what the bias is for the stock. Is it long bias or short bias right now? So let's jump into it. Right now I'm on the 15-minute chart. I trade the 15-minute and the 3-minute chart. 15-minute chart is my big overall picture, and the 3-minute chart is my more granular micro chart where I look for particular entries. So looking at the 15-minute chart, you can see that LYFT opened up, popped up, and then sold off. And then this dashed line right here, this is the open for today. When LYFT opened, it opened here, sold off, and now it's kind of been bouncing around down here. So tip number 1 on what to watch on LYFT. Let's look for the overall bias. So I'm on my larger time frame. I'm on my 15-minute time frame right here. I'm watching this push down and then bounce off. So we kind of hovered in this level and then had a pullback. So this line right here represents where this stopped initially, right here. There are some dips below, but that was after the fact, after the initial little pullback. So after this happened, it then came back and broke that line to the downside. So what that tells me is, as long as LYFT stays below this blue line, I'm feeling short bias. And I'm going to maintain that bias until the price action on LYFT works its way back up, breaches this line, crosses this zone, and moves back above the extent of this pullback. So in a previous video I explained this a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out a rectangle real quick. So anywhere in this range is sort of a neutral zone. It's a place to be careful. Below it, we're short biased. In it, we don't know. Above it, we're long biased. So right now, since LYFT broke below, came down here, and is now maintaining below this blue line, I'm short bias on LYFT. So what I like to do with Think or Swim is I'll just grab an arrow and right there, and I'll actually edit that to make it even clearer, and I'll make it red, and there it is. So when I flip open this chart on LYFT, I know immediately, okay, that's right, I'm short bias right now. I've been reminded of that. Until we cross back above this blue line, I'm still short biased. So once I have that figured out, we've got the bias, we're short biased. So now I'm going to flip over to my 3-minute chart, and I'm going to start watching LYFT on a smaller or faster time frame. So you can see today we bounced off this level, and now we're rolling around here. This level, this dashed purple line, is similar to this blue line. It's just this one hasn't been breached yet. This is a low, and once this line gets breached and it holds below, then this blue line will now basically move down here and be sort of the permanent breach line. And then our new neutral zone is going to move down in this area, and I'll show you that as it happens. I can talk about this again tomorrow if in fact it breaches. But what I'm watching now is it came down with hard selling pressure. We had a little buyer's pullback, selling pressure, pullback. So right now the selling pressure was really diminished right here. And it seems like the buyers sort of came back in for a minute. So I'm not interested in a short right here. I want to see stronger short bias than long bias. So that's tip number 2. You really want to watch for sellers to come in and buyers to get weakened. So as we roll along here, the ideal scenario would be to see a sustained move back towards the upside, showing a more true pullback, watching the buyers start to get weak, the sellers start to come in, and then taking a short position entry. Right now, because this is just sort of back and forth and not really doing much of anything, I'm really not that interested in it. I'm gonna watch this for a more definitive move back up. And once it does that, I wanna watch for it to roll over. When the buying gets shorter and the selling gets longer, that's where I'm gonna start to look for my entry on this. So that's tip number 2. Then my final tip, which is tip number 3, is let's flip back over to this 15-minute chart, and I want to show you something to be careful of. So as some of you know, I trade Facebook and Apple quite often, and if I flip over to Facebook real quick, you can see that, say this candle right here, that pushed down. That's a decently sized red candle. Well, you can see that moved from 168 down to 167.75. So that's a 25-cent block right there. So 25 cents. So I have to take my position size according to, 25-cent moves on a decent sized candle. So it's likely that Facebook could move 25 cents within, this 15-minute time frame. Now, if I flip back over to LYFT, tip number 3 is always watch your range, because this candle, even this candle here, right here, moved kind of one block on this chart. Well, one block is $2. So in this case, I would scale way back on my share size just to be careful because of the range of this stock. LYFT has a lot of range right now, and it's volatile because of the IPO. So be very careful on your share size. That's tip number 3. So let's go ahead and review things. So tip number 1, know your overall direction from your larger time frame. I trade the 15-minute chart as my large, 3-minute as my small. 15-minute time frame says that this is a downtrending stock right now until we break back through this neutral area and come out the other side. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is flip over to your smaller time frame and watch for a definitive move back to the upside, followed by a slowing in the buying and an increase in the selling, and then that's going to be a position where you could take an entry to the short side. And then tip number 3, make sure you know that when you take your entry, always watch your range on the side here. Always know that, okay, average size candles on this stock right now, they can move $1.50 to $2 at a time. So you really got to be careful about your share size. If you're trading a stock like Twitter, where a 10-15 cent candle is a big candle, you're trading 1,000 shares there, and you flip over to LYFT and say, all right, I'm going to trade LYFT. I'm going to buy 1,000 shares here. Whoa, you got to slow down, because 1,000 shares here could be a quick $2,000 loss or a quick $2,000 gain if you want to look at the positive side of things. So just be very careful with your range as well. So that's tip number 3. So I really hope that these tips help you out, hopes it gives you a little bit of guidance. As always, don't trade based on my opinion. Just use this information as adding to your bank of knowledge and understanding of how stocks move by price action, and just to get a little more information on this new guy LYFT on the NASDAQ. I'm excited that the IPO happened. I'm excited to be watching this closely. So I hope this helped. If you like the content, please hit that subscribe button. Give me that thumbs up. Thanks for stopping in, and we'll see you tomorrow.